My husband's affair partner showed up at our anniversary dinner, so I invited her husband too. Jessica stabbed her salmon with more force than necessary, watching her husband, Michael, charm the waiter at their anniversary dinner. 15 years of marriage, and she'd learned to read every micro-expression on his face, the way his eyes darted to his phone, the nervous laugh when she mentioned their shared memories. 3 weeks ago, she'd found the hotel receipts in his jacket pocket. Not one, not two, but dozens spanning 6 months. The same boutique hotel downtown, always on Tuesday afternoons when he claimed to have client meetings. The private investigator's photos confirmed what her gut already knew. Michael, with a blonde woman, kissing in the hotel lobby. Stephanie Morrison, according to the PI's report. Married, 2 kids, lived in Lincoln Park. Tonight, Michael had suggested this expensive steakhouse for their anniversary. Sweet gesture, except Jessica knew why. Guilt made him generous. Michael raised his glass of red. His wedding ring caught the candlelight as he proposed a toast to their future together. Jessica smiled and clinked glasses, tasting betrayal more than the expensive vintage. Her phone buzzed. A text from the number she'd memorized. She just left. ETA, 10 minutes. Robert Morrison had been surprisingly cooperative when she'd called him that morning. His voice had gone quiet when she explained about the Tuesday afternoon hotel visits. No anger, just resignation. Like he'd been waiting for this call. They'd arranged everything in a 20-minute conversation. He would bring Stephanie to the restaurant under the pretense of surprising friends. Jessica would handle the rest. Michael was mid-sentence about their vacation plans when Jessica saw the blonde hair through the restaurant's glass doors. Stephanie Morrison looked exactly like her photos, polished, confident, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than Jessica's monthly salary. She walked beside a tall man with prematurely gray hair who must be Robert. Jessica watched them approach the hostess stand. Robert pointed toward their table, and Jessica saw the exact moment Stephanie's face went white. Her manicured hand flew to her throat. Michael still hadn't turned around. He was describing the drink selection when Jessica interrupted him mid-sentence. "Honey, I think we have company." Michael followed her gaze and froze. His fork clattered against his plate. The color drained from his face as he processed what he was seeing. Robert guided his wife forward with a firm hand on her lower back. Stephanie looked like she wanted to bolt, but her husband's grip was unyielding. Robert Morrison extended his hand to Michael with a businessman's smile that didn't reach his eyes. He introduced himself as if they were meeting at a networking event, not confronting mutual betrayal. Stephanie remained silent, her lipstick slightly smudged from what Jessica assumed was nervous lip-biting. She avoided eye contact with everyone, focusing intently on the breadbasket. Michael stumbled through introductions. His usual confidence evaporated. He kept glancing between the 3 faces around the table, like a trapped animal seeking escape routes. Jessica signaled the waiter for 2 additional chairs. The server, trained in discretion, appeared with seating and menus without question. The restaurant's soft jazz continued playing, creating a surreal soundtrack to the unfolding drama. Robert ordered drinks for himself and his wife with the casual ease of someone accustomed to controlling situations. The silence stretched until Robert broke it by complimenting the restaurant's ambiance. He mentioned bringing clients here for important deals, his voice steady and conversational. Jessica admired his composure. She'd expected anger, shouting, maybe even violence. Instead, Robert treated this like a business meeting where uncomfortable truths needed addressing. Stephanie finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. She apologized to Jessica, words tumbling out about never meaning for things to go so far. Michael tried to interrupt, but Robert's raised hand silenced him. Robert explained that he'd suspected for months. Late nights, changed passwords, new clothes. He'd hired the same investigator Jessica had used, just from the opposite angle. Michael's hands shook as he reached for his glass. Jessica noticed he'd barely touched his expensive steak. Robert produced a manila envelope from his jacket pocket. Inside were printed emails between Michael and Stephanie, planning their next encounter. Detailed messages about hotel room preferences and timing around spouse schedules. Jessica read over Michael's shoulder, watching his affair dissected in black and white. The intimacy in those messages cut deeper than the physical betrayal. They'd built a secret relationship with inside jokes and shared dreams. Stephanie was crying now, mascara leaving dark tracks down her cheeks. She begged her husband to discuss this privately, anywhere but here. But Robert wasn't finished. He discovered Michael wasn't the only affair. There had been others over the past 3 years. A pattern of deception that made Stephanie's marriage a complete fabrication. Michael's face shifted from shame to shock as he realized he wasn't special, just another conquest in his lover's collection. Robert's revelation hung in the air like poison gas. Stephanie's tears stopped abruptly, replaced by defiant anger. She accused her husband of hiring investigators to stalk her, of violating her privacy. Jessica watched the dynamics shift. Stephanie transformed from apologetic mistress to cornered predator, lashing out at everyone within reach. She turned on Michael, calling him naive for thinking their relationship was exclusive. Michael's world was crumbling in real time. He'd sacrificed his marriage for a woman who collected affairs like trophies. The humiliation was visible in every line of his body. Other diners began noticing the tension at their table. Jessica caught curious glances from nearby couples, whispered conversations behind drink glasses. Robert signaled for the check with the calm efficiency of someone accustomed to cleaning up messes. He explained that divorce papers were already filed, custody arrangements made. Stephanie made one last desperate play. She grabbed Michael's hand across the table, suggesting they could start fresh together, away from their lying spouses, building something real. Michael pulled his hand away like she'd burned him. The spell was broken. Whatever fantasy he'd constructed around their affair dissolved under the restaurant's harsh lighting. Jessica felt an unexpected surge of pity for her husband. He looked lost, childlike in his confusion. 15 years of marriage, and he'd thrown it away for an illusion. Robert stood first, helping his wife from her chair with mechanical politeness. He thanked Jessica for arranging the meeting, shook Michael's hand like they'd concluded successful negotiations. Stephanie left without another word, her designer heels clicking angrily across the marble floor. Michael and Jessica sat alone among the ruins of their anniversary dinner. Untouched desserts grew warm while coffee turned cold. The elegant table setting now felt like a crime scene. Michael tried to speak several times, starting sentences he couldn't finish. Apologies died in his throat, explanations crumbled before forming. What words could address 6 months of calculated deception? Jessica studied her husband's face, searching for traces of the man she'd married. 15 years of shared experiences, inside jokes, comfortable routines, all of it felt contaminated now. The waiter approached discreetly, clearly wanting to close out the table. Jessica handed over her credit card without checking the bill. Money seemed irrelevant compared to the cost of tonight's revelations. Michael finally found his voice, asking what happened next. The question hung between them like a bridge neither wanted to cross. Jessica told Michael she was staying at her sister's house. The words came out steady, businesslike. She'd already packed a suitcase, already called her lawyer, already opened a separate bank account. Michael's face registered surprise, then panic. He'd assumed the public humiliation would be punishment enough that they'd somehow work through this together. But Jessica had been planning since she found those hotel receipts. Tonight wasn't about confrontation, it was about closure. Showing Michael the true cost of his choices in front of the woman he'd chosen over their marriage. She stood to leave, gathering her purse with deliberate movements. Michael scrambled to follow, knocking over his drink glass in his haste. The red liquid spread across the white tablecloth like blood. Outside the restaurant, Chicago's evening air felt sharp against Jessica's skin. Freedom tasted like winter wind and possibility. Michael caught up with Jessica on the sidewalk, grabbing her arm. He pleaded for another chance, promised counseling, swore the affair meant nothing. The words sounded hollow after everything they'd witnessed tonight. Jessica pulled free, gently but firmly. She explained that Robert had shown her the investigator's full report. 6 months of lies, elaborate cover stories, money spent on hotels and gifts. Their marriage had become Michael's part-time job. A taxi pulled up at Jessica's signal. She kissed Michael's cheek goodbye, tasting salt from tears he hadn't realized he was crying. Through the cab's rear window, she watched him standing alone under the streetlight. Her phone buzzed with a text from Robert. "Thank you for tonight. Justice comes in many forms." Jessica typed back, "Thank you for showing me the truth has power." The city lights blurred past as the taxi carried her toward her new life. 3 months later, Jessica signed the divorce papers in her lawyer's office. Michael had tried fighting for reconciliation through mediation, but the evidence was overwhelming. The settlement was generous, guilt made him cooperative. She'd kept the house, the savings account, and most importantly, her self-respect. Michael moved into a downtown apartment, close to his office and the hotel where his affair had flourished. Robert Morrison called occasionally to update her on his own divorce proceedings. Stephanie was fighting for custody despite the evidence of her multiple affairs. Some people never accepted responsibility for their choices. Jessica's sister helped her redecorate the house, painting over the neutral colors Michael had preferred. Bold blues and warm yellows replaced the beige compromise of their married life. The bedroom got the biggest transformation. New furniture, new bedding, new energy. Jessica ran into Stephanie at the grocery store 6 months after the restaurant confrontation. The woman looked tired, older somehow. Her perfect hair showed dark roots, her designer clothes replaced with department store basics. Stephanie approached cautiously, as if Jessica might cause a scene. Instead, she offered an unexpected apology, not for the affair, but for underestimating Jessica's strength that night. She admitted that Jessica's calm planning had unnerved her more than any screaming fit could have. The precision of bringing both husbands together had been masterful revenge. Jessica accepted the apology without warmth. Stephanie was fighting Robert for alimony while working part-time retail. Consequences had a way of catching up with people. They parted ways in the produce section, two women whose lives had intersected briefly but permanently. A year after the anniversary dinner, Jessica received a wedding invitation. Robert Morrison was remarrying a woman he'd met in his support group for divorced parents. She sent a congratulations card and a nice gift. Robert had been an unexpected ally in her darkest moment, proving that decency could emerge from betrayal's wreckage. Michael had tried dating but struggled with trust issues. Jessica heard updates through mutual friends who couldn't resist sharing gossip. Apparently, he'd become paranoid about being deceived, checking his girlfriend's phones and questioning their whereabouts. The irony wasn't lost on her. The deceiver had become obsessed with being deceived. Some wounds created their own prisons. Jessica had started dating again herself, carefully, thoughtfully, with clear boundaries about honesty and communication. 2 years later, Jessica stood in the same restaurant where her marriage had effectively ended. This time, she was dining with David, a kind man she'd met through work who valued transparency above all else. The table where she'd confronted Michael and Stephanie now hosted a young couple celebrating their engagement. Jessica watched them make promises about forever, hoping they'd prove more durable than her own had been. David asked if she wanted to leave, sensing her distraction. Jessica shook her head, surprising herself. The ghosts held no power here anymore. She'd learned that revenge wasn't about destroying others, it was about refusing to let their choices destroy you. That anniversary dinner had been her declaration of independence, not an act of vengeance. The restaurant's jazz trio played the same song that had soundtracked her marriage's end. This time, Jessica heard it as a celebration.